All right, all right. Well, let's just jump right into it then.
Sweet.
We've already had some really great conversation before the camera even started, but this is my good friend, Dustin Miles. We've been wanting to do this for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm so excited we get to do this today. Dustin is a physician associate in family medicine, but more importantly, you're one of the best dudes I've ever met in my entire life.
Oh, thanks, man.
And what have you known each other now? 3 years at least?
I think I was thinking about this before.
Is it 3 or 3 years?
It was during COVID when we started meeting.
Sure.
I want to say it was early 2021. So it's been 4 years.
That is nuts.
And we met in this building for the first time.
What are the chances of that?
Yeah.
Since the first time I met you, even walking into that environment, how we met, I was very hyper alert. I just didn't go to things like that. And I already am someone, as you know, that like is getting a read on everything that's going on. But in that morning, that setting is even more so. I could just tell from the moment I met you, just like how genuine you are. And as I've got to know you, I've just seen it more and more through and through. And you just like, I don't even know how to articulate it that does it even close to justice of how I see you. You care about others more than you even care about yourself. You know, that sure comes into your work, but not in your work, just in your actual relationships, and even in a relationship that you hadn't had the time to mature or grow. Like you don't see other people transactionally. You see other people relationally, to the point where you'd be willing to risk being seen different or misunderstood in order to love them well and see them well.
Thanks, man.
And even though I could already see that in you, over the last few years, especially, I've seen you develop like this confidence behind it too, where it's like you and I both can relate how often that's happened to us where you're misunderstood, to the point that even in certain scenarios where you want to step out of your comfort zone to love someone well or to be outspoken, it was safer for us to sometimes not do it.
Yeah, it feels risky.
Exactly. And I still saw you take that risk at times, but now I see it. It's just like almost all the time.
Yeah.
And you have this boldness about you because you know who you are. You know where your identity is rooted. The way that you speak into others, the way that you care for others, even at the risk of being misunderstood, it's still worth it to you.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Absolutely.
You were a big part of that, to be honest. You met me at a pivotal moment in my life. So showing up to that meeting with you guys was me stepping out and saying, the way I'm doing life isn't working for me anymore. I need to abandon my old ways. And a big part of that was getting vulnerable with guys that I was told were like-hearted, and that was accurate. And so it was risky. I almost feel like you and I have grown up together in the last 4 years, right?
Absolutely. It's been a very developmental stage of our life that we've shared together.
Yeah. Like going from boys to men.
Yeah.
Quite a painful process too. But like, I think that, you know, out of it, our friendship has kind of become one of those relationships where I can trust you. Like when I reach out, I'm going through crisis or I need input, like I can trust that you are going to look out for my best interest. You know, you're not going to be afraid to say something difficult to me. And that was always something I avoided. I avoided people that would maybe say something that would potentially point out a weakness in myself. I couldn't handle that there might be something wrong with me, you know? So it's been, I mean, you've had a big impact in that. God's put a lot of awesome people in my life over the last few years, but it's cool to look back on the last 4 years and just see kind of how you and I have changed into different men, you know, a little
Isn't
more
it so unique how a relationship that's rooted foundationally in the experience that we've shared together can already create such a depth with also strength that it's rooted in, whereas you could also be friends with someone for 20, 30 years and still not have that because your foundation of your relationship is based on a common interest or you just party together or whatever.
Yeah.
But when you meet someone, and a lot of times it happens through going through hard things.
Yeah.
And we were going through different hard things, especially from our mental health and different stuff that we were just sorting through that had been suppressed for a long time. And sure, there was commonality in that, but a lot of people are going through hard things, but still aren't willing to be transparent enough to get to the root of what makes it difficult. So then you can face that root together. Yeah. And then as we did that, I think that's where that bond really, really took place.
Totally. And that was, again, that was the first time in my life I had tried something like that. So I feel like since then, you know, the depth of relationships that we're able to create now with people is so much more real because we step out, now of our comfort zone. And
I wonder if maybe this is just a guess. Maybe it's because you're pretty hyper alert as well. You read people, I watch you scan the room, but really we learn that as a defense mechanism to scout out danger or a threat.
Yeah.
Or even an indirect threat of being misunderstood. And now you use that same skill that you were blessed with to look for the good in people that foundation can be built on as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just looking for the threats anymore.
Right.
It's the same gift, but it's a different perspective that you can utilize it now to look for something that actually you relate in that's not, you know what I'm saying? It's the same, but it's different.
Yeah, totally.
I recognize that in myself.
Yeah. And that's a really cool thing, right? Because, some of that ability that developed out of brokenness, trying to self-protect, trying to, for me, it was more assessing the room to kind of figure out how I could get people to like me. That was something
that chameleon effect.
That I would, exactly, the chameleon effect. So to like sort of now have that tweaked in a direction now that it can be used for good, where I'm more confident in my identity, but can also, continue to see those things in people. It is really helpful for sure.
Probably a lot of us have heard of the example where they'll have someone close their eyes, like Tony Robbins does it a lot, and say, all right, tell me all the orange things you saw in the room. Now tell me all the white things you saw in the room. And then he has you scan around, and he basically uses the example of like what you're alert to and what you noticed. And then he's also points out that you were willing to make compromises to see what you wanted to see, even though it was maybe a shade off. And he points that kind of stuff out. So it's similar, but you have a more of an acute awareness where like, okay, he told you to notice white. Well, most people notice the white walls, the white countertop, but you notice the white laces on that football out of your peripheral vision, right? So now you're able to use that same skill, but you're noticing the good instead of the bad.
Yeah.
And it changes your outlook on life.
And it really helps. I mean, especially with my job working in healthcare, my wife read this book or is familiar with the book. I don't know if she's actually read it. It's called No Bad Parts. Have you heard of this before? But it's kind of this idea that all people have this good inside of them, and a lot of like our badness is coming from, a broken place that can be healed.
Absolutely.
Right. And so to be able to sort of see that potential to be like, oh, this person's really defensive because they're scared.
Yeah.
And then to be patient and try to like see the good and then almost patiently wait to create a safe environment where they can sort of start stepping out into, I think, their potential, their goodness. I think that's definitely something that I'm learning how to do. And it helps me to kind of connect with people that maybe would typically be dismissed or, they're just seen as like, oh, that person's difficult. I'm not going to really get involved in connecting with them.
That book that I told you about on the phone the other day that Sean's dad gave him to read and that Josh is reading. After we trained legs last Saturday, I was laying in here on the floor for two reasons. One was how dead we were, but also as I was reading that book, I think that book was challenging me more and knocking me down more than that leg workout even was. He was in here working and Sean was over, and I was literally just laying over there on the floor. And I would just read a certain section. It would hit me so hard between the eyes. I just have to set the book down and just kind of sit in it.
Yeah.
And one of the things he was talking about is that even people that you've had controversy with or you don't like, or they stand for something different, like these monks would practice this ability that when they saw this person, they would look for God in them. And to the point that even if it was somebody that they normally would want to avoid, they don't even need to avoid them anymore because they're looking for God in them. And they're not even afraid of controversy anymore. They're not afraid of that because the confrontation isn't even necessarily with them. It's with what you just said, that brokenness. And so if you're looking for God in them, like you're seeing the beauty in them instead of the brokenness. And that, man, come on. That's going to take a little bit of practice, a little bit of work.
Oh man.
So this actually transitioned well at the end of that, because I almost started jumping around and because of how we were talking, but you just brought up how it affects you in your job. And let's kind of just back it up a little bit and we'll get there.
Yeah.
Have you always known you wanted to be in the medical field? Like, how did you get to that point? Like, what was that like? How much of your story you want to share, whatever you're comfortable with, that's fine with you. Well, but how did you end up getting to the point where you knew that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, it is crazy to look back on, because it almost feels like there was a path laid out for me that I couldn't have missed if I tried.
Sure.
Like, God used some bad decisions of mine and some unfortunate things to get me to where I am now. Mm-hmm. And I can see how he was working in it. But I actually had cancer. I think we've talked about this before.
I know that, yeah.
When I was 3. Mm-hmm. So I had retinoblastoma, which is a cancer of the retina, and it took my left eye. Mm-hmm. So I have a prosthetic left eye, mm-hmm. which, you know, if you really look at my story, you can see a lot of my insecurity and self-protection and wanting to be liked came from just feeling inadequate and different just about that alone, you know. But I spent probably, a fair amount of time in and out of hospitals as a kid. So it's weird because like I don't have any bad memories of being sick or anything like that. I think I was really fortunate. Like, I didn't have to do chemo or radiation. It was just a surgery to get rid of it.
Okay.
But, still going to doctors a lot growing up. It was an environment that I was familiar with. When I got to high school, I was kind of like, so my dad was a bodybuilder. Okay. And did personal training and stuff like that. And so I kind of thought I was going to go that route of maybe going to college. And
you mean you didn't go that route?
You can't tell, dude.
Sorry.
Dang it.
Yeah, sorry.
I knew this was coming.
No, it wasn't.
Not this
No, my bad.
No, it's all good.
We're not in the chairs anymore. I laughed so hard at that. So if you guys have watched old episodes, we used to have the 2 big chairs. And he sent me a voice note. He's like, dude, I'm down, but like, I don't know if I want to sit in that chair opposite of you. I'm going to be swallowed by that chair. So we got new chairs for you. So this is just for you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I was going to say, it might be the smallest guest you've had on the show.
False.
I'm cool with it, though.
False. Not even close.
So my dad, I guess, was kind of like maybe prepping me to follow in his footsteps. And I was really interested in nutrition and health and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I took an anatomy and physiology class in college. And it was the first time I'd ever studied something where I was like, this is incredible. Like, I remember learning how the kidneys worked. And I'm like, are you like, I wanted to study it outside of school. I wanted to know more about it. And I remember too, it like, I think, it kind of actually helped my relationship with God at that time in my life, because I was just like, there has to be a creative design.
This can't be coincidence because this is how intricate it is.
Yeah.
Right.
And it really made me want to kind of like take care of my body more and just kind of dig into understanding how the human body works. And we actually in that class went and did like a cadaver lab and got to like go, see bodies.
Did it bother you at all at first? You had to get used to it, or just
no? And that's kind of where I was like, oh, maybe I might be something do here. This. So. Yeah, in college, I studied anatomy and physiology down at U of A. I'm going to go this route of like trying to do something in the medical field, and ended up getting kind of partnered up with a couple of random roommates that were going to medical school. And I sort of just found myself like in with their crew. Like, instead of going to parties on Friday nights, like we were in the library and kind of dorks, but I found sort of like a group of people that I could connect with. And it was crazy because I was not a great student in high school, but these guys were like so mature and intelligent that I was like, I didn't want to get left behind. So I like found it in myself, this crazy potential to study.
Awesome.
And I was good at it. And I was like, dang, this is kind of like crazy. I never really applied myself in this way. And it was great because I was like also passionate about what I was learning. And I think just, through different life experiences, like being able to connect with people and care for people, combined with like just understanding how the human body works, it really just was like the perfect thing for me to step into. It never really felt like much of a, like this is going to be really me stepping out of my comfort zone,
Makes sense.
So
how long have you been practicing now?
13 years.
13? Are you older than me? How old are you?
36.
Yes.
I'm going to be 37. Yeah.
Finally, somebody's older than me. Always old. I used to always be the young one in every environment.
Yeah.
Now I'm older than everybody, but not today, baby.
You're welcome, man.
Have you seen in the last 13 years of you practicing a lot of changes in the medical field? Like, what have you seen? Like, as far as, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, not necessarily trends. I don't know an appropriate way of saying that, but what differentiations have you seen over the last 13 years?
Yeah, I'd say the number one thing is trust. Patients don't
It's
trust.
almost like you read my notes, because my next note says a lot of people are skeptical of the medical field today.
Yeah.
To the point, some people won't even go to a doctor anymore because they're so scared of going to the doctor that he's going to make things worse, or she's going to make things worse. Mm-hmm. What do you think it will take to restore people's confidence in the medical system?
Yeah, that's great. I think God has me exactly where I'm supposed to be right now to maybe, at least with my patient population, help earn trust back.
What does that though? How do you earn that trust back?
Yeah, so it's more listening than talking. I think when I first started practicing, I wanted patients to think I knew what I was doing. So I talked a lot. And I would really quickly, if there was any sort of gray area, try to kind of, make sure I cleared everything up. And these days, I think having so being a healthcare professional is very easy to feel maybe superior. You can kind of build a bit of a complex.
Like the surgeon God complex.
Yeah. It's easy to do. I mean, people really, they're coming to you with really vulnerable information. And, when you do a good job, you get a lot of praise. But you can also get kind of detached and realize these are scared people. And I think actually it's funny because one of the most profound experiences I had was about 5 years ago, I was suffering with depression and I went to go see a doctor, and I didn't feel like he didn't even really make eye contact with me, or he looked through me. And I was very convicted.
You're on the other side of that perspective there. Interesting.
So these days I listen a lot more, and I try to, like we were talking about earlier, you kind of read people and you can tell the people that are skeptical. And I try to establish more of like a rapport, and maybe like second or third visit, can start having more difficult conversations. But that's probably the thing that we need to do as healthcare professionals, just reestablish trust through listening to patients. They're scared. They want to have a voice.
Yeah.
They don't want to feel like, well, if I don't do exactly what the doctor wants me to do, he's not going to take as good a care of me or dismiss me. Patients should have, it's their body, right? And so I want to try to be respectful of that. Well, at the same time, sometimes you see people doing things that are really hurting themselves. And so you have to speak truth in love.
Sure.
So it's just that sort of like delicate balance there. But for me personally, I find that what I'm doing is working pretty well to just listen more and kind of have like a slow approach, like I don't have to convince this patient to get cancer screening this time because they're not open to it. I will have further discussions with them, and you see people are more responsive once you've given them time to think, and once they start to trust that you're actually looking out for them.
I think that what you're saying from like a person to person standpoint, that exchange of them actually feeling seen and heard, you're right. That is going to be vital to reestablishing trust. And then from a macro standpoint, like the other thing that brings a lot of distrust for people is they feel like a lot of the doctors are financially incentivized to push certain medications or certain treatments or things. Yeah. And so I feel like, thankfully right now, with RFK, and we'll get a little bit more into that, and the system that's being put into place or adjusted, the transparency now, the pricing system, that's very nice. Like, hey, that Advil costs $700. Like, we had some in our purse. If we knew it was going to cost that much, instead of you hitting us with a bill after we were at the hospital, we would have just taken the one we had, things like that, which is because people get so freaked out. They don't know what to do. They don't know what they're going to be able to do financially.
People literally will have there's a phenomenon where men are having heart attacks at home because they're too scared to go to the hospital.
Exactly.
That's horrible.
Exactly.
That is not a good society.
Exactly, man.
Yeah.
And so that's what's got to get fixed.
Yeah.
Being combated. And so, yes, the one-on-one, but also from the macro systems.
And I don't feel like God has like nudged me in that sort of like political kind of like, I'm much more relational one-on-one. And sometimes I have a hard time seeing the big picture, but I know there are good people out there.
They're equally as important.
Totally.
And most of the time, the person that's working on the macro side doesn't have the ability or the time to do it on the one-on-one. So we need both in conjuncture at the same time.
Yeah.
And equally or just as important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I do think, just as like to inject a little bit of hope, I think that what's going on right now, like things have gotten so bad that there are a lot of us, and I say us healthcare professionals, waking up.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a book out right now called Good Energy. I don't know if you've encountered it, but it's a, you know, pretty famous doctor who's a surgeon, and she basically just stopped believing in what she was doing because the system's pretty jacked up. And so she made it her mission to basically educate people on how to eat better. And she partnered with RFK actually, and they're doing a lot right now to change the system. And I love it because I do think that at the end of the day, it's going to come down to some big changes on the macro side.
Yeah.
But again, I can only do so much. So I try to treat every patient like an opportunity to reestablish trust.
Exactly.
And then also keep an open mind when people bring information to me that I'm like, in the past, I'd be like, you don't have a medical degree. You don't have a say here. That's not really fair, right? And so I actually learn stuff from patients all the time.
Makes sense.
They bring stuff to me and I'm like, I didn't know that.
That makes sense.
I'll go investigate it. I'll take everything as truth. But having that more, you know, kind of humble approach, I think goes a long way.
Yeah, you just touched on something I think is really important. Call it arrogance or whatever from the physician side to look at a patient and say, you're not from the medical field. You don't have a say here. Actually, that pride would lead to ignorance because a lot of viruses, they're mutating constantly. And so they're affecting people differently in a way they didn't affect it before. So for someone to just put their nose in a book and say it's always going to be this way till infinity,
right?
One, they're not even looking previously because things changed from where they were 80 years ago to where they are now.
Yeah.
You think they're not going to do that again?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense.
Constantly changing.
And you brought up that book, and that's where I was going next about she was talking about the food specifically. So we're seeing a huge trend right now, bringing the focus back on our foods and the environments that we're living in, you know, the fact that we're in screens all day, 24/7.
Yeah.
And RFK is like, I guess, officially and politically spearheading it now, which is great. We talked about that before we started filming, how he used to ask God every day for the opportunity to be put in a position where he could really do something about it. And here we are. But I guess what you would call health influencers or even actual doctors with a large audience on their platforms, they've been very outspoken and people are paying attention finally.
Yeah.
And I'll let you go for what's catching your attention?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually really impressed that my patients are reading labels now. So people are aware that it's not exactly normal to have, you know, these words that you need like a doctorate to pronounce and, you know, more than 5 ingredients in food. So patients are becoming aware that processed foods, especially like ultra processed foods, are harmful. It's a no-brainer. I mean, the rest of the world knows this. We're one of the most unhealthy societies. But the fact that people are more aware of this now has really caught my attention because they're more bought into making diet changes than before when you would just present them the food pyramid and they're like, well, I still feel like crap. People are noticing like, yeah, if I avoid these certain things, like I actually feel better. And so that's really catching my attention.
On that one specifically, how much are you seeing people now coming in looking for Ozempic?
Oh my gosh.
Because there's two sides to that. You have the customer, client, whatever you want to call them, coming in looking for Ozempic.
Yeah.
But you also, on the other side of it, I've had some of the people I work with that are getting in shape and eating healthy now, and they go into a routine checkup and the doctor pushes it on them. And they're like, wait, whoa, I'm eating right. I'm working out 5 times a week. And the doctor will look at them and say, yeah, but the difference is you are, and the other 99% of people that I'm telling to make the changes won't, and they just want a pill so they can keep eating bad and not being active.
Yeah.
And so I'm hedging my bets that you're not going to. Yeah,
that's an interesting approach. I don't get that opportunity too often. I work with an underserved population, so not a lot of them are even able to afford it. But
and there's like 8 different versions of it now, and all the stuff that's coming out of the side effects, and then down the road, even when you come off of it, what it does to your ability to even have an appetite or eat. And then there's breaking it down, the weight that you lose, what the percentage of it is actually bone density and muscle mass instead of body fat. That's selling that shortcut. People want
something doesn't sit right with me about it. Now, I will say, in certain diabetic patients,
for what it was made for, what it was actually made for. But it's not for the guy that wants to still sit there and eat a dozen donuts and lose weight at the same time. It's insane that they're letting it be abused like that.
Totally. Yeah. It's so unfortunate because I'm glad you brought that up. On one point, people are waking up and realizing, wait a second, why are Americans so unhealthy? We spend more money on healthcare than any other country. But, I was talking to an older doctor not too long ago, and he was like, when I was first practicing, there were no kids with prediabetes. There were no kids with fatty liver disease. And now it's like almost half of the kids in our country.
I didn't know it was that high. Oh my gosh.
Why? And I mean, it's the food. So I'm really glad that people are catching on to this and realizing
even the food pyramid.
Yeah.
The way that it was directly influenced by big agriculture and it all came down to money.
Yeah.
And the way that they pushed that, it wasn't even pushing the right healthy diagram, like the right structure for a child.
Yeah.
But it was being taught in our schools as curriculum.
I know.
So are the people's fault? Yes, to an extent, but it's kind of like when you blame a child for how they were raised by their parents.
Right.
That's the boat we're in right now.
Yeah.
And then they get out of their parents' house and now they're starting to realize, wait, there's more to the world. There's more information out there than what I was being taught or how I was being raised.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of what's happening right now.
Yeah.
We're getting out of that coddled scenario. And say what you want about social media, the comparison and doom scrolling and all that stuff. Yes, that's bad. But it also has been an avenue for information to be widespread release now.
Yeah.
That's not being doctored by somebody trying to manipulate it or make money off of it.
Yeah.
I mean, some people are still doing it, but you have the decision to make for yourself now by listening to 13 different people talking about the same thing.
Right.
You see the congruencies, you see the contradictions, and then you formulate what you believe and how you want to make your decisions.
Yeah.
And I love that part of it. A lot of the things and the changes we're seeing right now are because of that.
Sure.
Because it wasn't able to be manipulated by major media outlets of what's right or wrong to put in your body. And people are finally understanding and waking up that what I've been taught for so long that I thought was actually good for me is not.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, people have so much access to information that I feel like that's where a lot of anxiety comes from. I don't think the human soul was meant to have.
I agree with that.
Instant access to all of this information.
I shouldn't be able to look down at my phone right now and know what just happened bad 19,000 miles. It just doesn't make any sense. I agree.
Yeah. So you have to detach. And that's, it's unfortunate because the other health crisis is the mental health crisis.
Yeah.
And that's the other reason people are coming in.
Did you hack my notes? I mean, you're prompting me. You're literally following every single thing that I'm about to go at. My next question, how much do you think fear, worry, or anxiety is affecting people's health today? How does that materialize and what symptoms do you see? I mean, you're prompting me. This is your show now. Thanks for having me on today. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Man. All right.
I've definitely made a connection and there is data and neuroscience to back this up. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score.
I've heard of that one. I've heard of that one.
Just about how we tend to, when we experience trauma and stuff like that, we tend to lock that away, or like the brain fragments. And so basically, you have a traumatic thing happen to you and your body kind of holds on to it. And a lot of things manifest as physical symptoms. So I've
even heard it'll distort the memory to the way it feels it needs to store it or remember it in order to protect itself, even if it's different than how it actually happened.
Yeah. Which is why like EMDR and stuff is so helpful because it helps you access those places. So I definitely see people coming in with a lot of men coming in with chest pain. And they are like, there's something wrong with my heart. And we will run all the tests and everything comes back normal. And when you really get to the root of it, there's a lot of anxiety going on. And so I think people have a hard time realizing that sometimes anxiety can manifest as a physical symptom. And so it it can be tough. I have a lot of compassion for people that are dealing with that because, like we talked about before our visit, right? Like you experience a symptom and then you can start ruminating on it.
And then
next thing you
WebMD
know,
tells you you're going to die 19 different ways from it.
dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I never think about my left, little toe on my foot, but if I jam it, it's all I'm thinking about, right? And so your mind gets fixated on something.
Yeah.
And I think that, our society really is just right now set up for people to be anxious. We don't know who to trust. We have way too much access to information. It's a very fast-paced society. Expectations are high. So I will say, just as, kind of one initial point to what you were asking, that I am seeing what appears to be a lot of people coming in with physical symptoms that, when it all boils down, are coming from mental health. And if you address the mental health issue, you notice like the physical stuff seems to start to get better.
So in those anxious bodies, those anxious environments, your cortisol levels are high.
Yeah.
Right. How does high cortisol negatively affect the body?
So high cortisol levels are not good for a lot of different reasons, but it tends to cause a lot of inflammation in the body. And so that, on a cellular level, is going to throw everything off.
Yeah.
So you're going to have joint pains, fatigue, usually brain fog. I don't think we know exactly, like on the deepest level, how these like inflammatory responses affect the body. But, it's like you give somebody an anti-inflammatory that is, experiencing a medical symptom or a steroid, and you'll notice the symptoms that they're experiencing go away for a little while. So yeah, cortisol levels, and then the types of foods that we eat all sort of contribute to this inflammatory response in the body. And I think that's responsible for a lot of the different disease processes we see, chronic disease. And yeah, a lot of it comes back to stress. Or sleep.
The killer. Exactly.
Yeah.
What are some good ways, in your opinion, to combat stress, anxiety, cortisol, high cortisol levels? What does that look like from a lifestyle standpoint?
Community's huge.
I agree.
I don't know why that's
I love that was your
mind.
I love that it was, though, because to me, like, if you normally would ask that question, you even like, if I had to guess what a physician would, the last thing I thought they would come out of their mouth is community.
Yeah,
that's amazing. So why is that?
Well, I just see people in isolation suffer.
That's so true.
I heard this just last night in my devotion, that we're only as sick as our secrets, or we're as sick as our secrets. Is that it? Yeah, because basically we've got these things that we're suffering with, and just kind of like we have a narrative in our head. You're building up this story of future events, and we all know what that feels like. When you're up at night and you're thinking, "Gosh, is this a sign that I have cancer? I'm dying," and it's running. And
why is it so much more intense at 2 a.m. than it is at 10? Like, there's got to be some kind of medical explanation, because we all know that's true.
Yeah,
it's like the sun starts to come up and like some rationale starts to enter the room with the lights, with the sun rays or something. It's crazy how much more intense it is at that time.
Yeah, I think part of it is it's the only time of day that we slow down. We're just laying there.
You're alone in your thoughts.
Yeah, you have nothing to distract you. And so community is important, because you no longer are in isolation. So especially if you have a community where you can be vulnerable, you put the stuff out there and you get other opinions and people see you in it. And I think that diffuses a lot of anxiety for people. Obviously, we know that can backfire if it's a manipulative community, not a good community. But like the type of community that you and I were able to find ourselves in a few years ago, that was a great example of an anxiety reducing group of people, because we were able to work through some of our problems together, have the support. You don't feel alone. We were created for community.
That's right.
And that, to me, in my observation, the people that do the worst, like, dude, widows, oh my gosh, it's so sad. Their health declines so rapidly over a short period of time, because their partner, is gone. Now, widows that have strong community, they'll thrive, So
where people say that they died from a broken heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not just like, that's not just a saying. Like the heart, there's actually a broken heart syndrome where you experience so much emotional trauma from something that the chamber of the heart dilates and you have a heart attack.
No kidding.
I don't know the exact mechanism, but it's called
I've actually heard of that before.
Tasaki's syndrome.
I have heard of that.
Hopefully somebody can fact check me on the name of that.
They probably will.
But either way, there's obviously a very strong, you know, emotional, mental, physical connection with the body. And I think community is super healing, you know? I know for me personally, that's been true.
Yeah. I think of like I love that you started with that because that I wouldn't have been, that's not on the popular list. And I love that you just, because it's so important. Popular ones, let's just go through them right now. Obviously your diet. So what would that look like from your perspective? What would a diet that would help reduce anxiety look like? Non-processed foods?
Yeah. If
you wanted,
if you wanted to fight anxiety. Yeah. So just basically just eliminating processed foods, very limited alcohol consumption.
Sure. That makes sense.
It's surprising how many people drink every day.
Yes.
Like that's common.
Yeah.
I would say, you know, soda consumption, at least in my population.
So sugar consumption, caffeine regulation.
Yeah.
That's big. So a lot of people that are anxious, but they drink 4 energy drinks a day.
Right.
And 8 cups of coffee.
And they're always tired.
But
they're always nervous, right? Yeah. I think if you can clean up the diet, it doesn't have to be like extreme.
Right. No, it doesn't.
It's some small changes and setting boundaries with your eating too. Like,
yes, because it gives you a sense of control as well.
Right. Yeah. People at intermittent fast seem to do quite well because they've got these boundaries.
Yeah. It's a control mechanism.
If you don't think about, you know, you just eat when you're hungry, or a lot of people learn to eat when they're stressed as a coping mechanism. And so
there was an episode I did about eating and my diet and how I do things. And one of the things I touched on but didn't go deep in, but now it's appropriate, is the intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
And the only thing I really said in that episode is I just alluded, I think there are some benefits, but for what I was explaining, it wasn't really relative. But what I meant by those benefits is exactly what you just alluded to, is it gives them a sense of control over their eating. And that feels good. And what do you see actually, like, unfortunately from like the fad diet standpoint with the intermittent fasting, what people will do is they'll fast till like noon.
Yeah.
But then they just backload all of their calories that they would have had from when they woke up till
they'll
noon,
hit up
from
In-N-Out
noon to the rest of the day. All they did was backload it. But if they didn't do that, if they actually did eat clean for the rest of the day, do you think there actually is, other than like the psychological standpoint of feeling like they had control over their diet, is there like an actual benefit to them medically to fast at that point? I've heard of mental clarity and things like that.
Yeah.
But I don't see, I watch Huberman and those people that talk about it. And I don't feel like there's anything really truly conclusive of.
It's tough because like, since I've been practicing medicine for 13 years, like diet advice comes and goes and comes and goes. Now, coffee's good, coffee's bad.
Think of kale.
Yeah, right.
Kale was like the biggest
so
thing ever, and now people just don't eat kale. It's terrible for you.
Right.
But before, like 8 years ago, that's all. Kale salad was on every single special at every restaurant.
Totally.
You see so much of that,
and that's the
marketing.
Thing that's really tricky, is like knowing where to get information. I like to go with what's tried and true.
Sure.
You know, and so I keep it pretty simple. I mean, I've done intermittent fasting personally.
Yeah. Okay.
And I've seen benefits for sure.
What did you see from it?
So, I mean, I know, physically, like, you know, appearance wise, it's definitely a way for me to like lean down.
Okay. So it helped limit your calorie intake is what it did.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I struggle with, like a lot of people, with self-control when it comes to eating, you know, especially after a long, hard day of work.
Yep.
Like,
so it feels good. It's a comfort for you.
Totally. Like dessert is so unnecessary, but
I've had clients that are in the medical field, and it's especially the ones that work in the ER and stuff.
Yeah.
That
which is what I used to do.
They used to really struggle with their food control because it was what they went to for comfort after they got off their shifts.
Also, side note, people love to bring people in healthcare junk. So like during COVID, people would bring us pizzas and crumble cookies and all constantly in the break room, just junk food.
Really?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Wild.
I know people.
They'd be like my clients bringing me donuts to their workout or something. Like,
right. I know.
That's wild.
It is.
Why do you think that maybe they're just trying to do something nice, and they're just not thinking.
And they're not thinking,
they'll just chalk it up to
and
that.
we eat it. Okay. But so there's that. Like,
he's honest. I got something in my pocket right now. Oh my God, that's hilarious. All right, what about another huge trend right now is the cold plunge and sauna and red light and all that stuff. I think I've seen some good correlations for the red light.
Yeah.
The cold plunge, I feel like, is more mental. I think it does bring some sharp because you're so awakened, and it's a challenge to get yourself to do something that's difficult and uncomfortable and getting yourself to do it anyways.
Yeah.
I like that aspect of it. I've heard it helps with the anti-inflammatory. I've heard it's helped with inflammation.
That's the idea.
But now they're showing some things that, because a lot of the fitness people are into it, that if you do a cold plunge too close in correlation to when you weight train, that it'll actually distort your hypertrophy.
See, and this is an example of like, so what do you do, right? There's pros, there's cons, new information coming out. This expert says this.
Exactly.
This one says this.
Exactly. So
it's always a moving target.
So let's look at it though. So I think a trend emerged once someone like a Huberman or whoever started really diving into the trend. Then they exposed the validity of the trend.
Right.
So is cold plunge still good for you? Yes.
Sure.
If someone another thing I talked about is they already live in a super high stress environment, you already have high stressors and you do hard things on a consistent basis, adding another hard thing to your day doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so it's very case specific. And I think that's, again, like you were nailing it earlier.
Yes.
We can't just generalize everybody.
Right.
We need to take the time with yourself or with someone else to understand it's going to be different for each person.
From my perspective, you have to look at the individual.
The example I'll give, like people that are asking me about diet questions, I'm like, how do some people, if they have one alcoholic drink and the other person has 8 alcoholic drinks, it has the same effect the one does to the 8 for the other person.
Yeah.
Like everybody's body's different. You could take an Advil or eat a peanut and have an allergic reaction, and the other person, it doesn't do anything. Like we're not all the same.
Yeah.
And so by saying there's a cookie cutter answer that's applicable to everybody, there's some generalities, but to say that it's going to be the right answer for everybody is just ignorant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Straight up ignorant.
It is. And that's definitely something that's changing in my practice of medicine is looking at the individual, right?
What do you think about the importance of sunlight and getting outside?
I think it's important. I mean, unfortunately, I always think back to like, from my upbringing, from like a biblical worldview, you think back to like what the world was before all the pollutants and stuff like that.
Sure.
And I would imagine like there were a lot less skin cancers and a lot less, there's obviously a lot of disease still, but a lot of the things we're battling now, like chronic illness, diabetes, this is all more like newer stuff. So I do think sun's really important. Vitamin D is really important. I see a lot of skin cancer, so I can't deny that it's definitely doing damage to people.
I think more so what I'm referring to is combating anxiety, the importance of just getting outside. And I think
huge.
So like I actually wasn't even planning on doing this, but just for the sake of trying it, and maybe it won't happen right now because it almost always is on here. I'm just literally going to open my Instagram. I'm going to scroll for 2-3 seconds and see if one of these pop up, because you just constantly see things pop up that say, and it's not happening right now, of course, ways to combat anxiety, and it'll give you like a list, right? And it's like go outside, eat whole foods, exercise for 30 minutes for strength training, like all this different list. And then of course it's not coming up, even though I've seen it 19 times already today.
Yeah.
But I wanted to just kind of like go through some of those because I feel like so many of us are seeing it on repeat so much. And I think there's a lot of validity to a lot of it. It's getting you out. If you're already depressed and anxious and you're not changing something, why do you think you're going to start feeling different unless you're willing to change your system and change your environment?
Yeah.
It's almost like common sense. And I don't want to be demeaning at all because I've gone through it. But you like get in this mode where you're almost like a robot.
Oh yeah. I just call it a rut.
Yeah, that's fair.
You get stuck.
Rut. I like that.
Really hard to get out of.
Yeah.
And then the system is set up to like, and I say the system, but just our society is sort of set up to keep you in the rut, you know? Like I think my wife's from
the UK. They can control you when you're in the rut.
Yeah. 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 I suppose that is true, you know? You look at our society and like, we drive everywhere, there's a lot of societies where people are just walking,
Have you seen Blue Zones on Netflix? I think you'll enjoy that.
Okay.
I nerded out to it and watched it.
Like healthy societies. that they
So
study,
this
or-
guy, there's a cluster of people that live over 100 and it's either 100 years old, 110 years old.
Okay.
And so there's like an anomaly. Why are there so many in one little area? And so then what he did is he saw the correlations over like where there was like the highest concentration of blue zones. And then he would go spend, I don't remember, it was like a month or a couple months, and he would live there and like immerse himself, not as a tourist, but like immerse himself as a part of their society. And what he would then study is the commonalities between the different blue zones.
Okay.
And he would find, and like in your nail, exactly. They would walk. They had purpose.
Yeah.
There's a purpose meaning it wasn't like, what can I accumulate? It was, how can I serve someone else? What
Right.
is part of their religion or their
Sense of community was quite high.
Community was really high. Non-processed foods.
Yeah.
They were outdoors. They had like a garden.
They probably didn't work 7 days a week.
They did not. Exactly right. And that's so opposite of what almost all of our daily lives look like.
Yeah. I guess another category that's kind of been new for me personally in my mental health has been that day of rest. Like I did not know how to stop.
Yeah.
Even on a day off. It was just productivity. And sitting still made me so anxious.
Me too.
But I'm learning personally how to be okay doing nothing because I don't feel bad about it anymore. You know,
Something that kind of helped me mentally flip that switch was me not doing something was actually me doing something. I was recharging.
yes,
I had to plug my phone in the wall and leave it, meaning me, plug into the wall and leave it alone so it
Right.
could recharge. So I am still doing something productive.
Yeah.
I had to look at it that way.
Hey, and that's great.
Yeah.
Because I don't think like we're not just supposed to be sitting around doing nothing. Like, what are you resting for?
Yes.
You know, you're resting to get filled back up.
There's
so you can get back
intentionality
out
to
there.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why, you know, on your rest day, you're not like just laying by a pool getting drunk, you know,
Right.
like your rest is purposeful.
That's exactly right. So intentionality is a big part of the mindset.
Yeah.
It's not being like over controlling or anything like that, but you're taking control of what you can control to, you know what I mean by that. It's like we can't control our next moment. That's where faith comes in.
Right.
But the things that he does give us liberty to exercise control over to the extent that we can, we should. You make good financial decisions. So if you're not stressing about chasing a payment or debt or whatever that might be,
Right.
that's going to affect your anxiety level. That's going to affect how you're feeling. That's going to affect your ability to rest. Because if you have a deadline or a payment or a debt to chase, sitting still feels very negligent.
Yeah.
Because you should be doing something to fix the problem.
Right.
And so therefore, if we start making more consistent, good decisions with what we eat, what we buy, what we spend, what we consume, and then that's even getting in the next one, what you're consuming all the time, how much time your screen time.
Oh man.
Do you regulate yours? How do you do that?
About 5 years ago, I actually just left social media completely.
Awesome.
It was a point in my life where I was kind of trying to just radically change everything because I was going through a really difficult time. And I felt like my phone was probably one of my greatest sources of anxiety. So I got rid of that 5 years ago and I haven't looked back.
That's awesome.
Which is kind of freeing. I mean, the only thing is that like when we go hang out with people, I'm usually learning information from people that are gathering it. I think that's huge. Regulation with the phone. I mean, setting boundaries with that too, just like the diet, right? So not having your phone in your bed. So many people come to me for sleeping issues. And one of the first things I ask is, do you sleep with your phone in your bed? And a lot of people do. They actually use their phone to fall asleep.
Yeah.
And then you wake up and you're like, you know, and we all know what that's like. But if you could put your phone in a different room, you know, and have sort of like take like a electronic Sabbath.
I don't let myself look at my phone until I've already gone through my morning routine.
That's awesome.
That's my rule every single morning, and I've been doing it for a couple of years now.
Really?
Yeah. And it's not in my bed. It's plugged into the wall, sitting on a chair on silent.
Yeah.
And if I could, I would turn it completely off. The only reason why I don't is I've had enough emergencies happen in my life that I just...
It's almost irresponsible.
Yeah. But I know now there's features where you can, only if it's certain people can call you. So I probably should just make that adjustment. But
yeah.
I don't even, like, even when I first wake up, if I want to check what time it is, I'll look in the bathroom
Yeah.
or look at a clock. So that way I'm not just checking the time and then I have all these notifications on my phone. And the other thing I even do with my push notifications is they're very limited of what hits the front of my screen.
Okay. Yeah.
I do not have hardly anything in my even my messages that come in there. It doesn't show me a preview. It just shows me who it's from.
It's great.
So I'm very, very like granular about how I even like when I get on my platforms to post, I'll scroll some on Instagram because I mute and filter what I see.
Yeah.
But all the other platforms that I still post to for our businesses and to drive traffic, I don't scroll at all.
Yeah.
I don't look at any of the content. I don't look at anything on TikTok. On YouTube, I watch long form stuff. I watch mostly golf stuff, which I love, and car stuff and other podcasts to learn. And I guess I watch a lot of stuff on YouTube.
I'll get on YouTube pretty regularly.
And I love that because you're not doom scrolling. Like their shorts feature kind of encourage that from engagement standpoint. They're combating TikTok and Instagram Reels, and that's really changed the attention span because the person that normally will watch doom scroll, they're not going to watch a 19-minute video on YouTube. They're going to watch 30-second or 14-second or 4-second clips instead. And so they had to bring that into their platform. But what I love about YouTube is that I can get on there and bring up a old workout video from 1987 that some guy talked through for 38 minutes. And I sit on that couch and I drink my free workout and I sit there like a nerd and I just soak it all in. And then I go down and I try it. Like I love stuff like that. Awesome, so it's a powerful platform that I feel, just like anything else, comes with responsibility. Like you can drown yourself from drinking too much water. Like everything comes with responsibility and moderation. So I think that the way that to accurately or responsibly implement your self-monitoring is you have to be honest with yourself to understand yourself enough that, okay, I need to do it in a way that I actually will adhere to. Right. Do I need an accountability system? Do I need an accountability partner? Can I even be on the platform? Like what benefit does it give to me compared to what negative associations can I draw from it? How does that look? Does that outweigh? If it's more negative than it is positive, it's probably something I should consider cutting out completely. Yeah. It's going to be case specific depending on the person.
And you have to be honest with yourself too.
Because I don't get on Instagram or a social platform and look at me like, man, my life sucks because theirs is great. But there is a lot of people that do that.
I know.
I'm in it. It's been part of my job enough to know that most people are just putting their highlights on there. They're just like edited perfect life that they want you to see, but they might be the most anxious, depressed person in the room. Right. Because everything for them is a fake show or a facade that they want the world to see. And so most of us should be aware enough by now, but a lot of people still don't get that. They think that what they see on there is that person's life and that there's something wrong with them because they don't have the life that they see on there.
Some people are aware that that's true and they watch those things and judge those people.
And now as a parent, we're very conscious of, even because YouTube's been a huge platform for kids to watch now, even more than cartoons. I tried so hard to get my girls to watch like the old Disney stuff that I would watch, and they don't want to watch it. They want to watch YouTube videos of these other kids playing and stuff like that. But if you really pay attention to them, some of them are really high stem with constant push, like sounds and notifications on the screen. And it's like really, really shortening their attention span. Right. And I can notice a difference in my daughter's behavior after she's watched a show like that.
Interesting.
So now we've even gotten like really, really strict on which ones she's allowed to watch. Yeah. Some of them, these kids are like the Kardashians. They've got 300-400 million followers on their YouTube channel. These kids are like 8 years old.
Unreal.
Some of their channels are literally worth almost $500 million and they're like 9 years old. And the videos are at their houses and they have 47 different electric toy cars to pick from when they walk in their garage. Their birthday party has a celebrity and a cake the size of a mountain. And like it's like a Vegas Cirque du Soleil performance at an 8-year-old's birthday party. And all these little kids are watching it and comparing their lives and thinking that's normal and that's what they're going to get for their birthday party. Duh. Yeah. Like, why are we letting them watch this? This is so stupid. It's just like an adult sitting there watching the Kardashians' life and comparing themselves to them and thinking like, what's wrong with me? My what? Like living vicariously through a reality show. But now you're having your toddler look at it and do the same thing. Like, we got to wake up. Yeah. We got to wake up. And so there's only certain shows that will still let her watch on there. Yeah. And you have to just look at all of it.
I think that's wise, man.
But no, we do that and we think about it for our children, but there's so many ways we still don't do it for ourselves.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That convicted some people, including myself. I'm not even for a second.
Absolutely. I know it's funny because we're talking about all these different stress categories, and I can't help but think of the ways I'm falling short in all of them.
Are you willing? Is there anything that comes to your mind you're willing to think of, to share?
I would just say, I mean, it's always, for me, it's a battle with sleep, actually.
Really?
Yeah. So a lot of times I don't get enough sleep because I'm trying to be more productive. Or
do you have like really intense, fast thoughts at night where you're just like, your mind just won't shut down or shut off?
I can get to sleep pretty easily.
Really? Good.
Yeah.
That's
which
cool.
which is good. But a lot of times I'll like sacrifice sleep to, and I'll get up early to do something. You know what I mean?
Okay. So yours is more of like an intentional choice to not sleep instead of not being actually able to sleep. Even
and that's why I'm saying I'm feeling guilty because
you're blessed.
I'm making an intentional choice.
Yeah. And you're blessed that you can sleep. Yeah. A lot of people who want to sleep can't today, as you know.
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone other than as your phone? Because you were going there and like we got sidetracked.
Yeah.
You asked, what would you do other, is your phone in your bed, but what else would you do to help someone who struggles with sleep?
Well, I mean, it's no secret that like Americans don't get enough sleep. So I think just in general, making sure that you're getting enough sleep. Some people can function on like 6 hours and they're good. I'm like an 8.5
I need 8
guy.
I need 8.
And
7 to 8.
I just know that through experience.
Yeah.
My brain is more optimized when I get 8 hours of sleep. Eating late at night for sure is not beneficial. So I'd usually tell a lot of people that aren't getting good sleep, like, hey, when do you eat your last meal? And some people are eating up until like the hour before they go to bed.
I just saw something that for athletes, and they said it was only sample set for athletes, that if you eat 2 kiwis before bed, it like drastically improves their sleep cycle. What the heck? And they said specifically in there, this isn't for the general audience, but for professional athletes, high functioning athletes. Supposedly they did all these sleep studies on them, and that it directly correlated to them having better sleep and being able to fall asleep too. Which you're like, well, wouldn't there be a sugar?
You'd think the sugar would. All right. Interesting.
So people turn to melatonin. That's a big one that people turn to. Do you think that, because then you hear, well, if you're taking melatonin, then your body won't produce melatonin, and then it's going to end up being a problem. It furthers your problem. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I think melatonin, it just depends on what you're using it for. I mean, it definitely helps like night shifters. So like when I used to work in the ER night shift, like I'd take melatonin because I would be going to sleep during the day.
Yeah. And your body's not going to produce it when it's receiving sunlight. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So you kind of had to force it.
But generally, like, if people are getting adequate exercise, eating pretty balanced diet, not, consuming too much. One hot topic is like dopamine, stimulation. So people doing really stimulating things before they go to bed. Yeah. Watching like, if right before you go to bed, you're watching like some
zombies.
Yeah.
So many people watch those zombie shows before bed.
Understand.
It's common. I know. I'm not villainizing you. Everybody has
everything I'm saying is common sense.
We have our own things. We'd be hypocrites to say that like the phone. I will be on my phone.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times throughout the day, I'll build up having to get back in responses, and then I'm laying in bed literally responding to like 15 people in a row, and then some people get back to me, and then it's like and then what I was bad is then I'll check my email, and then I know like I should not be doing that. And then I'll go ahead and scroll Instagram one more time and check my messages, and then all that kind of stuff. Check my analytics, and then my mind starts going. And like, I think there is definitely, and they've proven it with all the scientific studies, the correlation to being in your screen and the blue light and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And shutting that down at a certain time and not bringing that into your bedroom.
Yep.
I can fall asleep to the TV though.
Yeah.
I can fall asleep. That does never bother, even as a kid.
Yeah.
Even as a kid, I always was able to fall asleep to the TV. There was something like
soothing about it.
Yeah.
Maybe the background noise.
Yeah. And I wasn't at that time either. Like I didn't have a struggle falling asleep without it. So it wasn't like I struggled with my thoughts then.
Yeah.
But it just never bothered me.
Yeah.
So that's probably case specific too. It's probably different for everybody.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the overall theme that we're getting at so far, is that we're all very uniquely
look different. At the individual, but like try to pick up on the big themes,
So to make a slight pivot from here, but it's still going to be relative, we both had periods of time we walked away, or I guess tried to walk away from our faith.
Oh yeah.
What brought you back?
It's a great question. So for me, I kind of see this a couple seasons of my life where I grew up with pretty strong faith. And then, you know, getting into high school and college, like the world presents a lot of different options that seem appealing. And it's kind of like, gosh, to maintain my faith is kind of a big sacrifice. I'm going to miss out on a lot. So I remember walking away from my faith, you know, kind of in that like high school, college phase, and then kind of refinding it again after a little bit of difficulty. But I recall about 6 or 7 years ago, my wife and I are going through some major marital difficulties. And I was sort of at that point kind of just lukewarm in my faith, you know, like it was convenient for me to, you know, kind of access it when I needed to, but it wasn't something I was sort of living my life through. And going through a really difficult time, I had this opportunity to really lean into my faith, or I was kind of a crossroads. I went the other direction and I was like, I'm just going to seek comfort in the world. And I went all in on it. Me too. Pretty much all in. Yeah. And I actually feel like it's cool to think back that God was with me in that, because I felt so distant from him. But I remember I was just like trying everything, just seeking pleasure and, instant gratification and kind of trying to build up my own little thing. And it just kept leaving me feeling empty. Right. And so that's really what I got to this point where I was so far from God, who had been blessing me my entire life. You know, I'd always known his presence was there, and it was never so far gone that I felt like I don't have a relationship with God. But I actually had made so many choices that like I actually couldn't like sense his presence at all.
Isn't it crazy how much of a trap it is too? Because the things that ultimately still left you feeling empty at first did make you feel good.
That's right. Right. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people can still be in that phase. Some are longer phases than others.
Yeah.
Because you can say, like, you can't tell me that I do feel better from this. My money does feel better, that my womanizing or my drugs or my alcohol or whatever that may be, until it doesn't.
Yeah. I remember a specific moment. I'm separated from my wife. That's how bad things got. And I'm living in a different part of the country. I'm in the Seattle area. And I go on this like once in a lifetime hike. It was beautiful. And I was so excited to go on this hike. And, you know, at this point, I've kind of like got everything. I got, you know, good job, pretty much all the freedom I want. And I go on this beautiful hike and I'm just out in nature experiencing, you know, raw beauty. And I felt empty. And it was so disappointing. I was like, wait, why am I not feeling like appreciation?
What's that? I don't want to butcher it because it's like that quote I think Jordan Peterson talks about, where the man looks into the abyss. What is that about? You know what I'm talking about? It's kind of like what you're describing, where he's looking in off the side of a mountain. It's supposed to be like the most beautiful thing. And it like somehow puts him into perspective of how he views himself. And this, I don't know. I butchered it. I know.
Hey, if Jordan Peterson said it.
Yeah, he said it right. I butchered it. So, you know, he did a lot of this with it and it made it sound even better, you know, one of these. So, all right, sorry. I did mess that up. Go ahead. Well,
you know, what he might have been alluding to is just the disappointment of, looking at something that, you know, it's almost like it almost is metaphorical for like I'd been climbing this mountain, you know, and you're just like, I can't wait, get to the top. And then you get to the top and you're just like, oh, but you know, there's something there that you should be appreciating, but you can't access it. And I was just like,
well said.
What is this about? And it was like a couple weeks after that experience, I was sitting on my couch and it felt very spiritual, very spiritual. I felt like a dark force had held me by the hand and walked me down this path and was like, you're going to love this. You're going to love this. You're going to love this. And then I get there and I'm alone, like as alone as I've ever been, feeling as far from God as I've ever been. And then even that thing abandoned me. Like that was the plan, like to get me to the point where I was just totally in darkness. I felt like I was in darkness.
That's the trap, is it feels right, it feels right, it feels right, it feels right. And now you're there, and now you're alone, and it's worse than it was before.
And the crazy thing is I had a prodigal son type experience where it was God just met me in that place.
Yeah.
And it's hard to put words to, you have these experiences where you're just like, man, it almost feels like a very special, intimate detail between God and I. But he made himself very present to me through a series of circumstances where I was just blown away that he would accept me back.
Yes. I'm so glad you're willing to share that part of it, because so many of, especially the guys that I talk to, men and women, but especially the guys, they think that they've got to get it turned around and get their shit together, is what they say a lot of time. And then I'm going to like do
Clean
this
my
God,
act
I'm going to do
up
this God thing. And it's like, no, he wants to meet you right now where you're at.
Yes.
Like even in your lowest form. Like for me, I would think when my hangovers would be so bad that I'd be laying on the floor in the tile of my bathroom, made a towel bed, your anxiety is terrible. You're thinking, what kind of decisions did I make? Like you're at you got puke on you. Like, in that moment, he still wants to put his arms around you. I was going to read this, and I'm going to read it right now because it helped me so much to kill the performance view of God, the harsh God, that I had to be a certain way or be good enough for God to love me.
Yeah.
And a friend sent this to me. And so I picture myself, and I don't know what you'll picture for yourself if it's that moment on that hike, but for me, it was laying on the floor chomping painkillers because I was puking blood and I was so hungover and just such a mess. I think of the prodigal son, like you said, in the pig pen. But it says, I love you, I love you, I love you, says the lover of my soul. Jesus came to open my ears to his voice that says, like, I think of him just like standing next to me, or not standing. He's on the ground. He probably got some of my throw up on him. And he's like holding my head. I'm your God. I have molded you with my own hands. I love what I have made. I love you with a love that has no limits, because I love you as I am loved. Do not run away from me. Come back to me. Not once, not twice, because I kept doing it over and over again. I kept messing up over and over again, but always again. You are my child. I am your God, the God of mercy and compassion, the God of pardon and love, the God of tenderness and care. Please do not say that I have given up on you, that I cannot stand you anymore, that there is no way back. It is not true. I so much want you to be with me. I so much want you to be close to me. I know all your thoughts. I hear all your words. I see all your actions. And I love you because you are beautiful, made in my own image, an expression of my most intimate love. Do not judge yourself. Do not condemn yourself. Do not reject yourself. Let my love touch the deepest, most hidden corners of your heart and reveal to you your own beauty, a beauty that you have lost sight of, but that will become visible to you again in the light of my mercy. Come, come, let me wipe your tears. Let my mouth come close to your ear and say to you, I love you, I love you, I love you. That's it, bro. That's what brought me back.
That's so healing, when you are at your most broken and then you realize that God is willing to meet you there. Mm-hmm. And he'll often use those most broken places that he finds us to really get to the real us, Mm-hmm. That's when we're just completely wrecked. Like none of my coping mechanisms were working for me at that point.
That's why when you said earlier, and I loved it when I asked you that one of the first things to combat anxiety, you said about being in a community. Well, when you're really authentic and you're at your worst, you're not all done up and putting on your mask or your show or your facade, and these people still love you and want to be around you and appreciate you.
It's healing.
I can finally breathe.
Yes.
I don't have to put on an act.
And people that have had that encounter with God, you actually, like, the closest encounters I've had with Jesus have been through those types of people.
Yeah, and that's because that's God through us. That goes back to that monk example. Like, if you see any good in me, it's not me, it's God.
Right.
The brokenness and me trying to play my game or my expectation or getting something out of you, that's me.
Yeah.
But the good you see in me,
Mm-hmm.
the good that made you feel seen, the good that made you
reflection
feel
of God.
validated, the love, that's God.
Yeah.
That's God. And that's why he designed us to be in community, as you said.
And, you know, I think it's important too. Like, I wouldn't want anybody listening to think like, oh gosh, like, so you're just telling me that basically you went and tried the world and exhausted everything. And now like you've got this relationship with God and everything's awesome. Like, you know, I had those like that moment of reconnecting with God, and my life has never been the same since then. But there are times where God still feels distant, you know what I mean? And that's where community can be so helpful. Like literally yesterday, I was just in a funk. Like I felt, I don't know, I was just getting hit with all this like negative self-talk about myself, falling short, letting people down, which is often what happens with me is I kind of beat myself up for not doing enough for God. And I reached out to a couple guys that I've cultivated deep relationships with, and they were able to just love me in it and kind of redirect me back to the truth, you know? And that's the beauty of like going through difficult things is we are able to develop new coping mechanisms for the difficulty through community, through prayer, through understanding what God says about you, and having the ability to access those things in difficult times. You know, it's a lifesaver. It's a lifeline.
How does this affect your work? How does it affect how you approach your work is a better way of saying it.
My faith or
all of this?
Well, I think, you know, it's funny because I used to work emergency medicine. And so I would have very brief interactions with patients. And so I never had to establish a connection, really. It was just treat the patient and then, you know, you never see them again. And so now I work in a very relational type setting. It's family medicine, you know, people come in and you watch people, you know, grow up over the years, and you walk with people through difficult things, and you tell people they have life-changing diagnoses and stuff like that. And it's difficult because relationships are complicated and people are complicated. And it was a lot easier, I'll tell you, to just be like, we called it treat them and street them, which I hate to say it, but like you treat a patient, they're gone. You never have to worry about them again. Doesn't matter if they like you or not. Now I sit with people and they're suffering. The reason why God called me to that is because, like you said, it's a reflection of his character. He loves these people and he wants to sit with them. And it doesn't matter how messy they come to me. I'm going to look for the good and try to love them in it. And it's just one way that I'm so thankful God is using my brokenness to bring his love into this world, you know? He met me in my broken places. And so when I go into work, it's not just like, oh man, you know, and I have tough days where I'm just kind of like dreading seeing certain patients, but it's almost like every time, you know, I find myself in a difficult situation, I realize that like God's got me in it for a reason. He's not wasting my time. And, you know, and
right there with you, with them.
Right there with me. And so it gives like a higher purpose to it. You know, I probably would have walked away from this type of practicing medicine a long time ago because of the difficulty of it. But it's like God's just rewired my heart differently. And the more I get to know him, the more this version of myself comes forward where I'm like, I can't believe I care that much about this person. Like they're not very lovable, but God's giving me a heart for them. Like in the middle of the interaction, like the first 5 minutes, I'm like, just dreading, like, you know, or maybe even being judgmental. And all of a sudden, you know, you're just looking for God in it, trusting that he's got this person in front of you for a reason. And you feel your heart changing toward them, you know, and it's, yeah, I think that's how it impacts.
He's equipped you for it. Your story, even just that you shared from 3 years old, having your eye removed and going through cancer as a child, to the things that you just described in your marriage and the life journeys that you've been on. Some of it's been so excruciatingly difficult, but it's given you empathy. It's given you a heart for people that are also going through difficult things. And then because you tried all the things of the world, you're not pushing those things on them. You've tried and you've seen tried and true that like it's only God. And so now when I tell you you're one of the strongest guys I know. I can even tell sometimes when I say it to you that you're almost like skeptical of me saying it, but it's because I see you're on the battlefield. You're at the front lines. You're with these people and you're actually doing it. You're sitting there across from them, sitting with them in their pain and giving them truth, whether it's how you present, that diagnosis or the treatment or the encouraging word that you send them out back on the street with.
Yeah.
But it's not a treat and street.
No.
You're loving them and giving them something that they can go walk through the rest of their life with.
And honestly, man, I feel like the most valuable thing I do is just love people. Like, obviously my medical knowledge is important. That's why they're coming to me. But often I find that people, I might not even have the answer for what's going on. But when people just feel seen and cared for, that's healing.
Exactly.
And I wonder if when Jesus was saying like that we would go out and heal people of illness, like if part of it is that.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the spiritual component of it,
Absolutely. There's so many examples of like the woman that was bleeding.
Yes.
When he calls her daughter first.
That's the most healing thing.
Exactly.
She's a daughter.
Because she'd been disowned by society and set apart as less than for so long. But in that moment, was her ailment healed? But more importantly, he called her daughter.
Yeah.
And you get to do both.
Yeah, man.
It's pretty cool.
It's a huge blessing.
Yeah.
It's a heavy burden.
What I'm really encouraged by right now is I can see that you see it. You finally know it.
Yeah.
Like I had a really cool conversation with a guy the other day that was just going through some of my stuff with me on one of my businesses, and he's good at what he does. And we were kind of just trimming down some of the message. And sometimes it takes someone else to help us see what we're actually doing, because whether it's like for me, I try really hard not to be misunderstood.
Yeah.
Sometimes to my own detriment. I'll have to over-explain, or I'll, whatever that is, basically hedge that happening, or I don't want to come across as arrogant. And so when someone asks me what I'm doing, I give them like the answer that sort of answers it, but still keeps it from me looking like I'm being arrogant. And he just kept like, he's just like, nah, trim it. And finally, what he realized he helped me see is what I'm passionate about doing is helping people overcome their insecurities. Yeah, I like helping them be healthy. Yes, I like helping them have confidence, but it's really about overcoming their insecurities the right way, because I did it the wrong way. And that's why I'm outspoken about it. Like I over invested in the physical.
Yeah.
I wanted to compensate for my insecurities by looking or getting attention or being whatever it might be. And I realized that I still was insecure.
Yeah.
And then from the mental side, like we could do that with our knowledge or whatever it might be. And I realized it was like, I had to get to myself to the point where I knew, because of exactly what I said, because I'm God's son, because I was made the way he wanted me to, and I'm already loved, that I didn't have to compensate for it anymore.
Right.
And I can do these things that from a scientific or physical standpoint help me feel better and lead by example and have discipline.
Great.
But really what I'm doing is implementing the gifts that he's given me.
Yeah.
And that's why it's gratifying.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of ways that we could, as humans, do incredible things, but with the wrong motive, and it's still not gratifying.
Right.
Whereas you could do something really simple with the right motive and feel more gratification by doing that simple thing than doing something what the world would see as monumental.
Yeah.
What's legacy mean to you?
Legacy. That's a good question.
And what would you want yours to be? Like from that perspective, like what does legacy mean to you, and what would you want your legacy to be?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think, I would start from like the perspective of what I used to think it meant, which was like making a name for myself. And when I leave, I want people, to remember me type thing. I think now it would be making an impact for God's kingdom, whether I know it or not, by obedience to him. And I have a great example because I think I shared this story with you about the girl that came into my clinic, right?
Yes.
I had treated a patient years ago on just an average day in the urgent care. And this was before my current job. And I hated that job, and I was depressed, and my marriage was on the rocks, and I was not in a good place when I worked that job. I didn't know why God even had me there. But I was pursuing God, and I was really trusting that God had me there for a reason. But I never really got to see, like understand it. And I just had this one patient come in not too long ago and tell me that when I was taking care of her in the urgent care, she saw God through me. And it almost brought me to tears, because I was like unaware, that just a simple interaction just had that kind of impact on somebody, you know? And I realized there's probably lots of times where maybe God protects us from knowing those things because we might get a big head, but we're constantly planting seeds with our choices, every single conversation we have. And so legacy to me would just be imagining this little seed that I really just choose to plant. God does all the work, but watching that just become a beautiful tree, a fruitful tree. In people's lives, so when I'm gone, little seeds that I planted would be bearing fruit for God's kingdom. That's what that would be.
That's a beautiful answer. That is absolutely incredible, man. The key part of that is whether you know it or not.
Right.
Yeah. And now again, your motive is in the right place.
Yeah.
It's not about you. Like you will be remembered by default, but that's not because that's what was important to you. Yeah. I love that. Last question. This is kind of a fun one just to end on. I ask everybody this.
Yeah.
If you could have a billboard anywhere in the valley, but you could have a saying on it and your name's at the bottom, or pick whatever you want to be on the billboard, but they know it's like from you. Your name's at the bottom corner. What would be on it?
Interesting. That's a good one, man. I wouldn't say Rafi.
Which is everywhere in Phoenix.
That's unbelievable.
Every bus stop, everywhere.
There's a saying that I've had stuck in my head for a long time now that just is risk love. And I've never gotten a tattoo, but I often thought if I did get a tattoo, I might get that, because that saying is so loaded full of meaning to me, that loving somebody is risky sometimes, doing the loving thing. And so I might just have that up there to just get people thinking, to think about what it means that loving isn't just something you feel. It's not just something that you stumble upon. It's a choice a lot of times, and it can be risky. It feels risky, but I think that we need more of that, people risking loving other people in our society. So if that was out there and it got people thinking, because like part of me would want to put like a Bible verse or something like that, but that could be quite off-putting,
Sure.
And if it was,
they don't understand
sort
the
of like
context of it,
right? If it was a God-inspired like saying, it might maybe somehow plant a little seed in somebody's mind that could be impactful.
What helps you get over the fear of taking the risk to love?
I already know that I'm perfectly loved.
Perfect love casts out all fear.
And
Exactly.
It's funny because like I read it, I've read it, and it keeps getting deeper in,
Right.
and I keep having life scenarios that challenge that.
Yes.
But it's an opportunity to really allow God to come in and remind me that he really does love me even more than I think. I heard that, somebody once said that the gospel is this, that we're more flawed than we have the ability to realize, but we're also more loved than we could ever imagine.
I even think on the flip side of it as well, that if you really love someone, like you're saying, risk love, that even if loving them ends up leading to pain for you, and in a healthy way, not an abusive way, it's not what I mean, but like, if loving them is a risk that you're saying of being misunderstood or whatever that is, if you love them that much, then it gets you over that hump of the fear of being able to take the risk, because it's like, I love them enough that even if this is to my detriment or something that puts me in a hard situation, it's still worth it. Yeah.
It's what Jesus did.
It's exactly right. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That part that's that little moment in the Passion.
Yeah.
Because I've talked about this before. I watch that every year, at least once or twice. And I'll just start getting angry, wanting to just go in there and rip those soldiers apart.
Yeah.
And then when he starts crying and praying for them,
Yeah.
it just like hammers me into my place.
Yeah.
Just humbles me to my core that it's like, Brent, I know that comes from a place of love, but it's still wrong.
Yeah.
Love them. Forgive them.
It's radical.
It is.
And
or even like turn the other cheek thing. Like that always bothered me.
Yeah.
But again, that's love. Well, we'll end with that.
I like it, man.
We'll end with that. We'll end up doing this again. We could talk for a long time.
Yeah. What was that, like a 4-hour episode?
Nah, I think I keep track. We're at like $1:20 right now.
That's
so
good.
Yeah. So we'll wrap this up.
Awesome, man.
If you guys, my email is in the description. If you, any of the topics, especially because this is the first time I've really had the opportunity to have someone from the medical field talk about, I give my opinion from tried and, true experience and things that work for me, but I'm not leaning on to any type of profession. And it's cool to bring you into this conversation and talk about those things because especially the anxiety stuff. So many people are anxious and depressed right now. It's why more people are on antidepressants than ever before in history, but yet we still have more people that are anxious and depressed than ever before. And so there's obviously something bigger in the picture going on that needs to be addressed. And I'm hoping and praying that through conversations like this and the information that's out there, that people are willing to start making the changes in their life, that we can start pushing those numbers the other direction.
Yeah.
One person at a time.
One person at a time.
One exchange of you letting them or helping them feel seen and heard.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to take.
Yeah. And then you can come out of your broken place and help other people.
Do the same. It's a ripple effect.
It's a ripple effect.
Exactly right.
A lot of times we see the bad in the world and the ripple effect of that, but there's a stronger force for good, a ripple effect that I think, like I said, I wouldn't be so empathetic and in what I'm doing now, it's based in a lot of the difficulty I went through and coming out of it. So there's hope.
There is. There is. See you guys in the next episode. Thanks for watching. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.